Preparation for the United Nations Association's Test of English.
In February 2021, the military of Myanmar, locally known as Tatmadaw, seized power from its civilian government. This was the third coup, following the 1962 and 1988 precedents. The present situation is so fluid, precarious and dangerous. While it is difficult to predict its future at this point, let us recall that each occasion of the past coups in the country was followed by the renewed grasp of an authoritarian regime. This video presents a background note for Myanmar. For the organizational purpose, the note is presented in two parts: 1. Chronology of domestic matters, and 2. 3 cases of bilateral relations. Please note that the next video will deal with specific issues associated with more recent and current events that have taken place in the country's domestic politics and international relations. Background note: 1. Chronology of domestic matters. This essay consists of 10 paragraphs. 1. Coups. 2. Tatmadaw. 3. State Law and Order Restoration Council. 4. National League for Democracy. 5. Promulgation of a new constitution. 6. Tentative democratic transition. 7. Aung San Suu Kyi and NLD. 8. USDP as Tatmadaw's proxy party. 9. Sung Hling.
1. Coups. Ever since its 1948 Declaration of Independence from the British colonial control, 1886-1946, this Asian country has been beset with political instability, accentuated by 3 coups in 1962, 1988, and 2021. In each occasion, the coup was followed by the renewed authoritarian military regime.
2. Tatmadaw. From 1958 to 1960, the military, known as Tatmadaw, formed a temporary caretaker government at the behest of UNU, the country's democratically elected prime minister, to resolve political infighting. The 1960 general election restored the civilian governance. However, in 1962, the military quickly seized power, the first coup, which, under the leadership of Ne Win, precipitated 26 years of military rule.
3. State Law and Order Restoration Council. In 1988, nationwide protests broke out, and in September of the year, the military's top leaders formed the State Law and Order Restoration Council, SLORC, which then seized power. Around this period, Aung San Suu Kyi became a notable pro-democracy activist.
4. National League for Democracy. In 1990, the military allowed free elections, which resulted in a landslide victory for Suu Kyi's party, the National League for Democracy, NLD. However, the military refused to cede power and placed her under house arrest.
5. Promulgation of a new constitution. In 2008, the country witnessed the promulgation of a new constitution, which allocated the military a quarter of the parliamentary seats, giving it effective veto power over constitutional amendments. The constitution furthermore allowed the military to keep control of 3 key ministries, namely Defense, Order and Home Affairs. In 2010, the national election was held but the NLD boycotted it.
6. Tentative democratic transition. In the early 2010s, a tentative democratic transition proceeded under the military leader, Sung Hling. Large political prisoners, including Suu Kyi, were released from detention, and some of the country's oppressive laws were repealed or amended. The country subsequently began to change, nurturing its emerging middle class with more social freedom, while letting its economy benefit from a rapid influx of foreign investment.
7. Aung San Suu Kyi and NLD. In April 2012, Myanmar held parliamentary by-elections, in which Suu Kyi and other NLD members won 43 of 46 seats. The NLD won a landslide victory in the national legislative election in November 2015. There was hope of change when Suu Kyi formed the first civilian government with the NLD. The armed forces, nevertheless, remained the formidable political factor, and Suu Kyi was then willing to cooperate with him. Rather than calling for the reversal of the campaign of violence waged against the Rohingya ethnic minority population in its western provinces. Reportedly, some 720,000 people fled into neighboring Bangladesh following the crackdown in 2016 and 2017.
8. USDP as Tatmadaw's proxy party. On November 8, 2020, the NLD won 396 out of the 476 seats in the parliamentary election, an even larger margin of the previous victory in 2015, while the military's proxy party, the Union Solidarity and Development Party, USDP, won only 33 seats. The military insisted that the vote was fraudulent. The coup attempt had been rumored for several days, prompting statements of concern from Western nations, such as Britain, France, the United States.
9. Min Sung Hling. On February 1, 2021, the military seized power in a coup, arrested Suu Kyi and other senior politicians, cut internet services and took news channels off the air. Then the military-owned new channel announced that the 64-year-old commander-in-chief Min Sung Hling was in charge of the country, at least for the next 12 months.
Background note: 2. Chronology of bilateral relations with US, Europe, USSR, Russia, China. With bitter anti-British sentiment running strong at independence in 1948, Myanmar, known as Burma before 1989, chose not to join the Commonwealth. In fact, during the first several decades thereafter, the country remained isolationist, certainly not associated on a bilateral basis with any Western countries.
This essay consists of 3 paragraphs. 1. Burma, Myanmar, US, European. 2. Burma, Myanmar, USSR, Russia. 3. Burma, Myanmar, China.
1. Burma, Myanmar, US, European. Burma, Myanmar's relations with the US, founded over the latter's support of the Chinese nationalist forces that had fled China in 1949 and occupied parts of northern Burma. Burma was an active member of the Non-Aligned Movement, NAM, early intra-global South cooperation, not willing to align itself with the global North. From 1988 to 2011, Myanmar authorities acted defiant in the face of intense pressure from the West. 1. Burma, Myanmar, US, European. The US and the EU placed broad sanctions on Myanmar because of the latter's military crackdown in 1988 and its refusal to honor the 1990 nationwide election results. Consequently, many US and European firms withdrew from the country. In the early 2010s, the US administration began its rapprochement with Myanmar and praised the country's move toward the democratic and civilian control.
2. Burma, Myanmar, USSR, Russia. Soviet was among the first to establish diplomatic relations with independent Burma, but initially even this was complicated as the Burmese communists, who had played an important role in the independence struggle, were engaged in a civil war against the government. In 1955, the USSR began to provide Burma with some limited assistance for nation building, agreeing to offer preferential trade deals, but this tailed off in the mid-1960s. At the time of the China-Soviet rivalry, in the 1960s and 1970s, Burma was closer to China than to the USSR. Historically, the USSR and China have tended to veto UN Security Council resolutions to condemn and punish Myanmar for its human rights violations.
3. Burma, Myanmar, China. Burma was the first non-communist country that recognized the communist regime of China. Soon later, however, the country severed its official relations with China as the latter supported The insurgency of the Communist Party of Burma, CPB. The anti-Chinese sentiment remained strong within the country until the early 1970s, but it somewhat tapered off thereafter, allowing Deng Xiaoping's state visit to occur in 1978. After 1986, China withdrew support for the CPB, and began supplying the Myanmar military with its arms in exchange for increased access to the local markets. 3.2. Burma, Myanmar, China. China soon became the country's top trade partner. More recently, Myanmar participated actively in China's Belt and Road Initiative. China also played a key role in the Myanmar government's effort to end conflicts with various armed ethnic forces, along the Myanmar border with China, that oppose the government's rule. Presently, China, Myanmar's long-standing international supporter, seems to be in decline, with popular opposition to a very large Chinese-backed dam growing.
Thank you for watching. Have a good one. Cheers.